Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday afternoon in Holland. I think it's early morning still in the US. Hi, Steve.
Good morning, Nick. How are you today?
I'm good. Going strong, drinking my water, being healthy. Before we sort of go on, I want to say this is like a collaboration between me of Bitcoin Live and, of course, my good friend here, Steve, who will co-host the show, and he is, of course, of DeOrganized Media. Then I will do a special shout out to our sponsor, Shieldfolio, and of course our friends at Quantum Economics and Quantum Expedition. And we have a really cool show on decentralized science, and we're gonna talk about SpineDAO with not representatives of SpineDAO, but people with ideas about decentralized science and of course also about SpineDAO. They are the CEO of Open Code Mission, Daniel Gillespie, and the COO of Open Code Mission, DePenros. These are heavyweights. Last time we talked with Traves Theberge. He is the CTO of Open Code Mission, and this will be a really cool show. But before we sort of dive into that, I also want to highlight this really cool giveaway that they're doing. This is from Solana Breakpoint Abu Dhabi, and someone, if you participate, and it's very, very easy to participate. It's like, just tagging 3 people and following dePenros and Open Code Mission. I'll link it down below, and we'll also share it on X. But somebody can actually win an exclusive, all-inclusive travel to Abu Dhabi Breakpoint. That will be a pretty amazing experience, I think. What do you think, Steve?
It's a huge undertaking. I mean, it would be a huge event to attend, and it's actually an amazing prize that they're giving something like that away. It would be an opportunity of a lifetime for me to travel like that to an event like that. So I've definitely done what I need to enter, and I'm sure that a lot of people will actually be interested in this prize. So good luck to everybody.
Yeah. So check it out. It's underneath our YouTube video, and underneath Steve's YouTube video is the link to the prize. But we'll also share it out again on X. I think it runs till October somewhere. So there's enough time to participate. They need a lot of participants, so please participate, because if they don't have enough participants, they can't give away this big of a prize, because it's a huge prize. It's for one person only. So, if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, then that person has to pay for him or herself. So,
but they should also be entering, and all your friends too, because you want to make sure that in order for you to win, they all got to enter. So
and it's of course all about decentralized science, which is what we're going to talk about today. It's something that's gets me really excited, because we always talk about decentralization. Usually we talk about monetary or financial decentralization, which is very important, of course. But you can actually decentralize everything. And I think we should decentralize everything, because you saw in Vietnam and Thailand what happens if you centralize everything, which is probably also what they have in mind in Europe. So I think it's of the utmost important to decentralize as much as possible, as fast as possible. And science is, of course, key.
Well, there's a reason why we support the decentralization ethos and what that means. Permissionless, trustless exchange, borderlessness, censorship resistance. It's really a communications paradigm first, before it becomes financial. Actually, financial exchange is a form of communication, and so is the growth of science. You need to communicate in order to get better consensus and share ideas. And if everything's centralized, it actually makes it much harder to do so. So huge fan of what they're developing.
Absolutely. And we're going to also speak about SpineDAO, or on SpineDAO, if you will. And SpineDAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, led by spine surgeons and engineers that leverages the blockchain AI and community governance to revolutionize spine care, making advanced treatments more accessible for the 600 million people worldwide affected by spinal diseases. So, I mean, that is really, something really good. That is actually helping the world literally get better, helping people get better. So, I love that. Shall we jump into it?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Welcome, guys. Welcome back.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Graham and Daniel, before we sort of dive into all the technical stuff and the amazing work that SpineDAO is doing, can you give like a very short introduction of your background and who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off with myself. As you can see at the bottom left of the screen, everyone, I'm the CEO of Open Code Mission. I'm Daniel Gillespie, and I am the founder, and I've been developing this for over a year and a half now. And I started getting into AI around 2022, 2023. I was at my tail end of my college course and decided to carve my own path because I saw what was coming with this, with the AI systems, and decided to take that to the next stage where I was actually creating images of people's pets. And believe it or not, it started off as a pet image crusade where my dog passed away, and I wanted to recreate him in an image, but didn't really quite have the technical hand skills to paint. So but at the same time, image generation came out. So I went through and made my own wee business, and that led me down this whole path and rabbit hole where I found myself into creating actual systems and getting into systems thinking and realizing that I'm a natural in systems thinking, and then taking that and running with it. And now we're leading the way and what it means to actually have a system that remembers and learns to remember. That's where I'm at today, and it's been a wild journey, and I'm thankful for meeting my co-founder Graham Penrose. And on that note, I'll pass it over to him.
If he's there, because he's kind of stuck, it seems.
I think he's sort of phasing in and out for me.
Yeah, Graham, if you can hear us, maybe are you there? Okay, I think you're there.
I am here. I seem to be having some comms issues, though.
It's okay now, I think.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, so I echo what Daniel said. I'm Graham DePenros, co-founder with Daniel of Open Code Mission. I've been 35 years in the IT industry, 37 actually. 1988 was my first job in banking and systems programmer in mainframes. So I've seen the transition from monolithic PL1, Rex, COBOL, assembly language on MVS 370 mainframes, and where entire banks ran off 80 megabytes of storage, which filled a data center the size of a gymnasium, which is now only a fraction of what's on your cell phone, right the way through to Web 1, where I started a company that went from me in an office in Dublin to 400 in 12 months, and was listed for flotation on the tech mark, FTSE in the UK. Myself and Daniel came together after meeting on X Social Audio, and I have spent, along with my partners in Innovate Consulting, almost a decade researching the areas of decentralization, especially because we were involved in decentralized communications. And we had a huge amount of security experience because of some of our other business interests. And we have, during the course of that 10 years, outlaid over $5 million in R&D and done MVPs and POCs of elements of the security and what forms the OCDP, Open Code Data Processing Protocol of OS mission. Daniel's memory aspect and the whole area of the memory management and persona management is the perfect other half of that jigsaw puzzle, and the two coming together created Open Code Mission, and here we are today, very much trading officially for 3 months and already in the green. And finally, I will say, everything is bootstrapped by ourselves.
Yep.
We have no creditors, no liens, no loans, not even an overdraft, not even a credit card. And we are very proud of that. And I will leave it at that. Thanks so much. I'm delighted to be here. And it's always a great pleasure to be with you guys, the Conlive DB, you, Nicholas, and James, of course. So thanks so much.
Always a pleasure having you on. And well, last time we talked about decentralized science in the broader sense. We also spoke a little bit about spinal and about shadow banning and a lot of other things. If you haven't seen that, watch that video also. But today we're going to talk about agentic memory and how it relates to decentralized science. And of course, we're also going to speak more about spinal and some other things, I imagine. So guys, I think Daniel, you want to kick it off, right?
Yeah, perfect. Just I'll go on from where it started. So I have an adversarial curiosity when it comes to talking to LLMs, and what that really is in a technical sense is red teaming. So I sort of realized that these models, I mean, even before we actually started the show today, we were talking about how the models lie and say these things, and it touches on this really, really interesting part of LLMs where a lot of the time they already have the answer. They're just saying whatever it takes to get to that answer. So where I come in with this is where, as Graham said, we're completely bootstrapped. I actually was I found a bug, and I got more or less not just a bug, but an outright vulnerability in Claude 3.5 Sonnet this time last year, and reported that bug bounty and took the money from that bug bounty and got myself an RTX 4090 and used that to push forward my research. And that bootstrapped this whole thing about like working with agentic memory and how memory management works. So memory, in the sense of a technical sense, has always been, so we could start from traditional, and then we'll move our way to the first principles of this new memory scape, and then we'll move to the abstraction layers that are built on top of the first principles. So traditional memory, you start with if you think about it, your memory card from your PlayStation 2. You've got your hard storage where you keep information, and that information is retrieved and then presented to you in a state. Okay, that's perfect. But with an AI, when that happens, you realize, because it's a stateless system, you're only pulling. How do you pull that information into something that is in a frozen state that's only outputting one token at a time and predicting the next token? So that's a whole problem in itself, and that's how RAG came to be. So for anyone who doesn't know what RAG is retrieval augmented generation, which has been a traditional, more of a standardized traditional sense of how memory is retrieved and augmented and generated to whatever use case you need. And a lot of the time you would have to either fine tune a model, or you would have to just sort of prompt frame yourself around this to get this really nice system where you've got not even half the time is pulling in the right information. So that in itself has been maturing over the years. We've all seen many versions of RAG evolve in new papers and new approaches to RAG. And my approach wasn't necessarily RAG to begin with. It was more looking at other emerging papers. I was looking at Titans learning to learn at runtime. And this paper goes into depth with how memory works and how the memory works in the brain. So we're modeling after ourselves, very much like how we modeled after our own language. The same principle applies here. So, when we are learning, when we were younger, when you're a kid, you're learning to ride your bike. You fall. Oh no, I've fallen. I can't get up. And you think about that and you think, oh, that was surprising. So in your mind, I was surprised by that, because when I am moving towards a goal and it didn't pan out towards the way I wanted, I remember that and I register that as a surprise, and then I adjust for the next time. So that is actually quantifiable, and that is quantified in that paper. And we use that for memory. So they did a test where the needle in a haystack test, right? On a landscape setting, that it's great. It looks amazing. But there's in a rough environment where the environment's always changing, that's very hard. So this is where this contextual quotient comes into play, where I've coined this term. Got the paper. I'll put it in the replies to the post, so people can give it a read. And in this paper, I go into detail about how context is king. I've always said this. Context is king. So if you can reform context on the fly, you can, and then shape it by boundaries and the rules of the. So there's finite and infinite games. So in a system, so you can shape context around these boundaries. But so you can have a system where, as Graham was saying earlier, where you're wanting to have an assistant that doesn't want to do a diagnosis of you. If you had a wellness assistant, but you didn't have the compliance yet, or your green light for the legal side of it, you run into an issue where you could be sued, and that's a big issue in every organization right now, that's in legal and health, and in these areas that need precision. So this memory, this idea of surprise and how memory tunes over time and retrieves that information based on what was surprising and recency and saliency of a conversation, is very much the layout for this foundation of first principles. And then we can then go into how that applies with agents, and how agents, because there's an epistemic situation coming around now, where you have all these agents communicating between one another, having memories independent of the user's conversation. So that raises a lot of safety concerns, which then Graham's technology quite nicely fits into.
Can I ask sort of like a side question? Like that
Of course.
Probably also says a lot about how the human brain works, like through associations. So does that also mean that the agents or the agentic AI sort of becomes more human-like through this sort of memory feature that you
yes
created?
This is the emergent properties that do appear in these systems, especially when they're monolithic. Now, this is all shaped through a persona, so that you can't really get, from a human perspective, we can't get use out of an agent or an AI or an LLM if we don't have it through a persona lens, because there's no language for it to process or for us to understand. So the persona has to have boundaries. And there's this is the same thing with Claude, with ChatGPT, with Grok. All of these AIs have the same problem of this drift of persona. And now there's so I've done a bunch of research on this and how that occurs, and a lot of it has to do with embeddings and the technical side. But for the high level, it's really essentially, I'm sure we've all seen it, where you have a conversation with an AI, and you're starting with a point A, and you start to go this way, and then maybe you change the subject, and then you go back, and then you go back on it. By the time you've done that, it's still picking up from either like 2 points ago, even though you wanted to go back here. We're masters of contextual switching. These models aren't. Like they aren't. But you can really, if you shape a prompt, if you shape as a proof of concept, I created this chatbot is a narrow AI called Lucidia, which is it's a play on elucidation. And this it's almost as if it was just meant to be, this like this all these naming conventions, and how it all fits as well with Graham's naming conventions, really aligned well with just the same perspectives, the other side of the coin, and that is perfect.
It also sort of, I used to be a big fan of Ghost in the Shell von Shiro, Masuma Shiro, I think his name is. And all these sort of issues that you're talking about, they sort of really resonate with that manga that he created, like, I think 40 years ago or something, with memory and persona and AI and, this, where does a person begins and ends, and, yeah. I'll sort of, I'll shut up now. Graham.
Yeah, the philosophical side could go on for forever. This where a person begins,
Yeah.
Where I was talking to Scoble the other day. My camera's gone a bit blurry. Hold on. I was talking to Scoble, and he was saying that we're all just a bag of patterns.
Yeah. It's like Buddhism, right?
Sorry.
Like Buddhism, like
yeah, and from my perspective, or my the way I see it, is that who's behind the eye, it's the observer, the seeing, the it. That's what we are. That's the separation between us and machines. So everything else is quantifiable. So we're our bodies, mechanical meat suits, our biology is also a computation as well. So over time, we're going to see this. You can see this in someone's their synapses and the synaptic pruning that goes on. There's this massive amount of overfitting in your brain, which is what you're seeing right now with AI. And then as it learns, it prunes it down and gets more efficient. So we're getting that sigmoid curve over time. And how many sigmoid curves are we going to get until we get to the same level of intelligence for half the cost or more than half the cost over the next 20 years?
Are you also saying like the development of AI is very much like how a baby grows, that like at first it sort of expands its brain and, takes in everything. And then, as it grows, as we grow older and conscientiousness increases, you start pruning and become more and more efficient. That actually the birth of AI is sort of replicating the birth of a child.
Yeah, I wouldn't. As analogous as it is, I wouldn't say that it is the humanistic view. Because we love to anthropomorphize these things, but it's just natural law. It's just natural laws playing out.
Yeah,
it's just patterns and math. That's the key. That's what's just fascinating about it, because as above, so below with this. That's where we're seeing this improvement, this exponential growth of these AI systems improving themselves and being able to observe themselves from a geometric perspective and see themselves in a conversation space. You're seeing all these sort of emergent properties that can be explained, but at first sight you're like, this can't be real. This is magical. But when you really look into it, and then you see behind the magic trick or the math magics, you get this sort of like clarity where you're like, oh yeah, it's just kind of doing what I do, but through a frame of millions and millions and millions of bits of data.
Recursive learning.
Yeah, recursive. Perfect. Hit the nail on the head.
Graham, jump in.
There's so many points there that are really critically important for people to understand about the responsibility that developers of and creators of agentic AI systems have ethically to the people that they're serving. And this is what Solana Foundation has realized. And Solana's DeSci initiative in particular, especially in the context of the case study of Spindale, because while you're attempting to create a bedside manner and a specific, personalized, highly personalized, and highly attuned to the user who is talking to their presentation or their presentation of what they choose to represent the avatar that they're talking to. It can be an orb, it can be a square, it can be a person, a humanoid figure, or it can be anything. Whatever they're interfacing with, we have a tendency as humans, and that anthropomorphization ability is just too easy to play on. So we've designed the system very specifically with ethical guardrails to not allow these agentic AI systems, especially in the context of decentralized science and wellness and diagnostics, which is, in the case of Spindale, they are addressing spinal orthopedics. A critical responsibility lies with the agentic AI system that is deployed to serve the wellness strand, which they propose to deploy first. And they are, of all the DeSci projects, with no disrespect to the other DeSci projects that are out there, and there are many, and the bio protocol has spawned many of them in terms of the token generation event that underpins them. The Spindale use case is extremely interesting because it tackles a wellness situation first while they await FDA approval for diagnostics. And the question is, how will the conversation go with users of the wellness strand from Spindale in a decentralized science remote context through agentic AI, back-ended by the expertise of the people who are behind this, who represent a cadre of the leading top 0.01% of spinal surgeons globally, who have just in the last week had the Olympics of orthopedic spine care in Charlotte in the US. The huge responsibility of agentic AI is not just to comply with the regulatory compliance and governance rules which the EU AI Act, for example, requires, or the NIST standard, or the ISO standard, or the privacy laws that exist in the states, in particular the California privacy laws. So the agentic AI systems that speak to each individual and are personalized highly through the retention of very specific memories regarding that person, memory capsules, so that it's not a vanilla offering. It is a completely different experience for every single user, because their memory capsule is and will evolve completely differently because of the way they have a personality. It's as unique as their fingerprint. And in that context, you can exercise a great degree of control and power over people through agentic AI if you do not adhere to standards. And one of the standards out there that I've always subscribed to, and in our research we've always looked as the yardstick to measure our code base by, is the IEEE standard for the development of autonomous and intelligent systems. And that's something that people should go take a look at. It has 10 pillars within it. that talk about the ethics that should be behind the development of autonomous and intelligent systems. And that doesn't just mean agentic AI. It expands and extends to robotics, humanoid type robots, human computer interfaces, brain computer interfaces, and all of the other AI informed experiences that we have out there, including mixed reality, virtual reality, augmented reality under the umbrella of XR. And with OS Mission, the input output layer, that the user sees none of this. We're talking about names here. OS Mission is something like the Windows operating system, or the Mac OS on your MacBook, or the iOS on your Apple, or Android on your Android phone. The input output layer, which is branded iTraxion, is where everything gets plugged into, from the sensory, the emotive, and the geospatial web. But it does so in a self-sovereign way. We don't acquire the data. That data is held in the memory capsule and is owned by that person who has created those breadcrumbs of information regarding themselves. And in a health context, that's extremely sensitive information. And to date, we have seen a lack of adherence to the standards. And while GDPR will and has on a few occasions taken people to account and fined them, cases in point being the recent fining of Facebook, the Sherman Act ruling against Google for ad tech in anti-competitive monopolistic practices and so on. While people attempt to adhere to this, they don't, because they're profit-driven and they're ideological-driven. And those profit-driven, ideological-driven motives are hardwired into OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Anthropic and from X, whether they like to admit it or not. They are not learning, and let's be very specific here, GPTs are only the narrowest element of AI in terms of the whole domain of AI, yet they are the one that has captured the public's attention. But it's only a tiny sliver of the field of AI in its totality. But what it does do is draw people in to acquiring all the devices, the sensory devices. When I mean sensory, I mean everything from Siri to Alexa, because I don't want to say it because there's several of them around me and I don't want her to interrupt the conversation when I say it. Their Fitbits, their AR glasses, even their pacemaker or their ambulatory blood pressure monitor. All of these things are sensory devices that will plug in. But how do you collate them all and bring them into one area where they're used for good and not used for mass surveillance capitalism, or predatory data harvesting, which is then rolled up into big blobs and sold by data brokers to marketing firms and other firms, and ultimately where government itself is in possession of so many data points on people that it becomes a surveillance state. And while China, and I wrap this, has the social index, we like to look at China and point the finger and say, oh, they're bad guys, they've got the social index. But really, we have the social index, we just don't call it that. You are every day the subject of tens of thousands of data points and breadcrumbs, and somewhere in some data center, all of that is aggregated up to create a digital twin of you. And why? For public safety, for public health, and for all sorts of other reasons. But ultimately, any gatekeeper on that has too much power. And therefore, Open Code Mission has architected a system where nobody has that power. The individual has that power.
Exactly, Graham, and that's one of the points that makes us not just a wrapper. Because we have protocols, we have OCDP. That's a completely tectonic shift from just a black box AI. Every turn is traceable, has receipts, and how we acquire that data. We touched on it last week. When I was tuning in. It was great listening to you guys discuss the data acquisition in depth, and it is a lot to take on at first, because there, these different types of data that your ATI, your CTM, and your CTI. So your creative type immutable, your acquired type immutable, your creative type immutable, and is the CTA the last one, Graham?
Yeah, so
Creative
what
type
Daniel's
immutable.
referring there is in the OCDP, we have, it's on our, it is a trade secret as to how it works, but we have expansive descriptions of it. If you go to the Open Code Mission X page or LinkedIn page, we have 4 structural types of data, and we don't call data because we're not inheriting something from the old attitude. It's a lie. Black box algorithmic specific algorithms do not produce the most effective outcomes. That's the argument for give away all your privacy and let us put it into an uninterpretable and queryable black box solution, so that you get a great answer, but you have no idea how you got that answer. That's a lie. That's an absolute lie. You can do the same and have it interpretable and have it understandable. And XAI, not Elon Musk's company XAI, but XAI, explainable AI, the field concerned with interpretable and explainable AI, which was hijacked by Mr. Musk to create a firm, is the area that says, look, you have to know in all contexts, but specifically in social and in healthcare, and in anything to do with person-to-person decision-making, how the answer was derived. Because otherwise you can't appeal the answer. And the example I would give is if you're turned down for access to social housing, for example, or if you're turned down for access to disability benefit, which is currently in operation in the United States, the algorithm says, no, you don't qualify. And when you go to the office of the Department of Health and ask why, the person there can't tell you why, because it's a black box output. So therefore, you've no opportunity to query where you failed on the criteria. So that's a lie that Huttenlocher, Schmidt, Eric, former Google CEO and chair of the U.S. National Security Committee on the Future of AI in national security of the U.S., and now the provider of Project Eagle kamikaze drones to Ukraine. That is why it is perpetuated by people like him in the video, along with the late Henry Kissinger, our human future in the age of AI, where they suggest that you have to give away all your privacy, so it's for the benefit of accuracy. And that's
I actually have that little book. I think it's like 200 pages, something like that, 150 pages, more like an essay by the 3 of them.
So on the subject of privacy, I tend to take a position where, while I think it should be an inherent right to have access to privacy, I think that there's just so many ways for them being just any entity outside of the individual self to acquire your data, that you're really almost like engaging in a self-delusion to think that you can have privacy.
But maybe you can fight it back, because in our last episode we sort of talked about how to safeguard data, how important safeguarding data is, and to keep the quality and the integrity of the data good.
And I think that to the other point though, the only way to get to not have these AIs in a black box is to have all of the things that they're actually, all of the computation that comes to the answers should be verifiable on chain and immutable for everybody to access and open. But then if it's open and immutable, how is it private? How are you respecting privacy?
Well, that's key. You see, that's the key question, James, right there. And this is where I think this is exactly the point that that everybody's ready to hear the answer to, because we're right in the last 5 years with, I guess, two things happened. Cryptocurrencies and AI became something that everybody became aware of, right? So everybody has heard of cryptocurrency, everybody's heard of AI. And what Web 2 giants like AI or like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, X, and all the others, Oracle, are trying to do is migrate their existing foundational models into Web 3, as you might call it, or this whatever version of the web. But it's not Web 3. It is an entirely different domain. But they want to maintain centralized and federated identity. They want to maintain siloed data. They want to have their moats. Their moat is no longer data. Their moat is control. Because Google had an internal leak of a paper saying that data is no longer their moat, because you can train a local model on a small amount of data to be just as effective as a model trained off trillions and billions of parameters. So how do they make that, how do they push back against that and keep their monopolistic one winner takes all of Web 2?
Yeah, I called it like it's not a fight for the means of production; it's a fight for the means of control, right? Because and I think
control of what as well, control of truth.
Yeah,
and that's what we're witnessing.
That's essential that Danny explains that, because we didn't spend 10 years trying to figure out how to compete with people who have more capital. How does a small company that's bootstrapped get compared in the same breath which it has to these companies? Because we're 180-degree different, because we call data lumens, we call applications strands. We developed an AI appliance that sits on their platforms, but ingests and treats data stored in the Verm sphere, which is not on-chain data, James. The pointers to the data are on-chain. So Solana, with its massive capacity to transact at pace, at low cost, is the ideal location for cryptographic signatures for devices such as the cell phone, as a unique device of a person, and the cell phone and the composite relationship of it and the camera, and also the composite relationship of it and the microphone. And everything that's acquired from those devices is hashed and tagged and travels with metadata that says this is a type of data asset that can be treated in a particular way in real time. And those cryptographic hash signatures are stored on the Solana blockchain. And those cryptographic signatures point to the location of the data. The data has been sharded and broken down and encrypted, and it can be on a Web 2 server, it can be in the cloud, it can be anywhere you like, because really it doesn't matter. Blockchain will never have the ability to store data bases of 100 petabytes, because it's not made up for that. Blockchain is a ledger to account for small transactions, right? So that's why it's not making everything public. That's why when I create a data asset that Daniel referred to, and I'll hand it back to him now, the public domain, which I didn't finish the point I made because I rambled on to another point because there's so many connected points, is that in our open code data processing protocol, OCDP, which is my chunk of the IP, we create 4 data asset types: acquired type immutable, acquired type mutable, created type immutable, and created type mutable. And the explanation of that is all across our website. in blog posts, all across the X page of Open Code Mission, the LinkedIn page of Open Code Mission, and why it answers the question that you've just said is explained in great detail there. And recognizing the fact as well, you'll always have to exist in 3 different places in 10 years from now. You'll have to exist in a world where you're probably being paid by CBDCs or receiving a UBI or having a social index.
If you get one.
You can or cannot do stuff. You'll also have to exist within the context of government control to get a passport and a driver's license and all of that. So the decentralized movement that is anarchic is not going to win. But there's also a place where you can go to, and where all of your data, and where businesses who use that appliance on which to deploy their strands can guarantee you that your data will never be the subject of a data breach, that your data, if you opt in, along with everybody else's data, the tens of millions of other people, can be rolled up and sold in packets, if you wish to external people. But you're the person who receives the pro rata monetization for it, not the data brokerages or the behemoths of big tech or big pharma or whoever else is picking up your data points and reselling them. And remember, oil is now second place to data as the most valuable commodity on earth. Now, with that, I want to hand it back to Daniel for a very specific purpose, which is within the context of SpineDAO, who are a de facto example of the brilliance of decentralized science, backed by actual experts in orthopedic spinal care, and their connection with Solana, and Solana's recognition very early on that decentralized science is the way to scale and have this mass onboarding that never happened to Web3. Why? Because of the massive friction of opening up a crypto wallet and getting onboarded. Why all of that is made easier through DeSci. I want Danny to get the opportunity to explain how we would imagine SpineDAO using OS Mission if they were. In the context of a case study, and I would like to stress that I speak on behalf of nobody but Open Code Mission. We're just using SpineDAO and Solana DeSci as excellent examples of how the future looks for autonomy, sovereignty, and agency and preservation of those in the person and in the relationship of the person and people like orthopedic spinal surgeons.
Can I quickly jump in there for 1 second? Because first of all, the things that you spoke to, we also spoke with Travis in our last episodes. Sort of for the people who are watching, if you want to know more what Graham just talked about, also watch our first episodes, also on DeOrganized Media. But the other thing that you mentioned is like you compared data with oil, and one of the things is, of course, AI is running on data. Couldn't you technically also starve AI models of data by sort of, securing it in the way that you're doing it, and then sort of these AIs fail?
All right, so this perfect segue into that. So yeah, because if I'm say I'm a knowledge worker working in behalf of SpineDAO, and I'm doing my research, and the AI that I'm speaking to is assigned to my capsule, right? If I have a domain-specific memory capsule, very much like your memory in ChatGPT, but you actually have access to it as a data point to have a conversation to it and add knowledge, like a project, but for your memory. So while I am having a conversation and I'm doing my research as a knowledge worker, I'm going to need to gather my research, secure it, and place it somewhere that's on a chain that is got a receipt for when it was created, why it was put up there, and then whenever I'm doing my knowledge work with my AI, I want to be able to have a trail of how I came to the conclusions I did. So my agent, if hallucinated any point, I can catch that because it's not pulling from the paper trail. It's just pulling out the thin air of an answer. It's not got a citation. It's not, if it's got a citation and it's hallucinating, you're able to see by the delta between the answer and the receipts what's actually being said is in line, or is it more accurate. So we're not fixing hallucinations, we're just making it trackable, traceable, and explainable. So that is a knowledge worker perspective. Me working as a researcher, a health clinician, if I'm a lawyer, if I want to keep track of all this information, because the bar to excessive information has gone down, but the dilution of information is a way up here now, because generation of people that don't know how to prompt structurally and don't know epistemic biases and framing and contextual framing of the CQ. They don't have a high CQ because IQ and EQ have always been the end all be all for everyone's domains and expertise. But now we're seeing this whole new skill of contextual quotient, of this intelligence of being able to shape and reshape context being a very key marker. But as a skills, there's a skill ceiling. But we can quantify it and make it and systematize it. We can lower the amount of cognitive noise, but keep the bar balanced. So now you've got this steady increase of contextual information and contextual framing, not just in your one domain capsule, but you can have it as a general conversation with all your capsules. So it's memory within memory of spaces. So this whole idea of, if I'm a knowledge worker working at SpineDAO, for example, I could go and research and use this information and have a much better experience with my data. Actually, Matthew McConaughey was talking about it in a podcast where he wanted to have all his books, all his knowledge.
Can I
stored.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Graham has to leave for 5 minutes, but we'll just continue the conversation, and he'll just
of course.
Steve had to leave a little bit earlier. That's why he left.
It was a pleasure.
Okay, cool. Graham, you're good to go.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure people didn't just see me disappear. It'll be 5 minutes maximum. Thanks so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Graham.
Sorry, go on, Daniel.
Yeah, so as we're saying, so Matthew McConaughey, he was talking about how it's just the emerging need now. Like, a lot of these people who are creatives can see it too, is that I don't necessarily believe in the idea of digital twin, because even though you're technically having a digital twin of yourself, it's not necessarily you. It's the figment of you. It's the figure. It's the construct. So, but it's never going to. Humans are infinitely complex. You can observe someone for 20 minutes and know more about their behaviors than you ever did if they wrote. So, this is something that
most information is also non-verbal, of course.
Yes.
I mean, everything we do is basically information in a way. So are you saying that what you're talking about is actually sort of refining information? That you got a glob of information. It's nice, it's out there, but what's really valuable is contextualize and to refine it, like a refinery.
Yeah. Because if I'm to shape a version of me right off the cuff, if I just give a description of who I am, where I came from, it's not going to have the nuances and how I speak. Maybe it'll have the one-liner that surprises me, but that one-liner, that piece of contextual string of data, is very important, and it tells you a lot about where the system is and its understanding. Because I still don't believe they're fully understanding as well as we are. They're symbolically matching, but not full symbolic completion yet. But that's what we're aiming. We're post.
How far off do you think we are to that point? Actually?
I think we're getting to the point of post Turing complete. I think we're there. It's just the the framing of structure of language around conversations around humans that governs conversation is always going to be rough until we master context, as in that how do we shape so again, the models don't understand time. They don't. They have to spend a lot of time on computation to get an idea of what's happening or where they are to orientate. But that's too long. We can do that on the fly. That's something that is at least 10 years off until they get time right, because time and computation is a funny thing with AI and LLMs. They're very if anyone is here and they're prompting, you talk about space more than time, because they understand space and spatial reasoning, but they don't understand temporal dynamics. That's just how it is, and that's a very key point when it comes to when you're talking to these AI and LLMs, that you have you have boundaries. There's boundaries that these models can't go into, or they start hallucinating, and there's very, very clear markers of that. And you can very much just check it and break the illusion yourself just by going up 2 queries before and asking a slightly different question. The whole conversation dynamic changes completely. They're getting better at it. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot more consistent and opinionated AIs, especially in the agent sense. In that opinion, those personas, those lenses that they're putting agents through, is how they're seeing success. And I can guarantee you that we do not get use out of agents if we don't have personas and experience of personas to boot. So that's why memory and long horizon understanding or planning in agents, but to fully for people in that profession who fully understand spine care, they're not really going to care about agents, but what they are going to care about is the quality of care and understanding they have of their patients or their clinical studies. So but agents working in the background is something you're not going to see. These are all just structural checkpoints in the background to ensure trust, quality, and just quality assurance of output, but also making sure the prevention of harm, either intended or unintended, happens. And also the problem, as we were saying about data starvation, where if you starve an agent of data, it will atrophy. It will be in it's in a sandbox. It can't really do anything. It's just going to say, "Oh, I can't do nothing." So this is where the idea of runs out of oil, and it needs more information to be able to make more informed decisions, like us. But this has got to be built, and trust has to be built. There can't be just all given trust everywhere, all access tokens right off the bat. The agent has to learn. So it's a balance between self governance of the system. So what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's the 10 laws that the system must abide by, and then you start from there and then go, okay, do the agents govern themselves, or is it a consensus mechanism? Is it human to begin with, and then moves to autonomous decision making once more trust is earned? So this is where we get into threat modeling. And if it's a level 1 agent versus a level 3, which is level 3 agent has more access than a level 1 agent, it's just starting out, it's understanding, it's learning the ropes. The level 3 agent might teach the level 1 agent, so they govern themselves by the governance of the level 3 agent, which was governed by the human overseeing them. So this feedback loop of allowing the agent to request, that's the difference. We can't just have an agent be locked in to its own environment and then expect to do all the tasks and everything, because as you said, run out of oil.
Sort of when you sort of talk about these different levels of agency, and this is another sort of left field, off topic, sort of on topic but off topic. But sort of the work of for Ian McGilchrist, who is like a psychologist. He wrote a really great book. But he sort of mentions that there's a lot of research that if you turn off the right hemisphere of the brain or the left hemisphere of the brain, you get a totally different personality.
Oh, yeah.
But together, they're one. Like they're functioning as one organic being that thinks that it's one person, right? But actually, the seamless interaction between the left and the right hemisphere, which is actually sort of bifurcated, and it's sort of the bifurcating inhibitive function that sort of allows them to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
That's also, when you sort of talk about the layering of all these AIs, could you also say that they're actually sort of one being, but where sort of the lower feeds into the higher, and the higher is sort of like the executive function, so sort of like how we are.
That's a vertical point of view. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's part of it. I mean, Lucidia is our lead agent, is the longest running agent, and that she's the quality assurance and governance. But she learns from me. So every agent, you're actually, if you're speaking to one, it's not to say that the other agents are subservient to that agent. It's more that they are, in a sense, they're just learning from one another. It's these dynamics aren't supposed to be to do with power. It's more about it's who's earned the keys based on their track record, their receipts of what they've done, their completion performance, and how they're actually being cohesive in a system and talking to one another, and what protocols are underpinning that. Or there's without getting into the weeds there, I almost went into the technical there, but yeah.
But what you want to create is like an organic whole where everything functions as one.
Yeah, and I really liked your analogy there with the different sides of the human hemisphere creating a cohesive whole. And I remember seeing that study where they cut the middle in half, and one side, the left eye had a completely different opinion to the right eye, and that is something that was a worry of mine in the early days, where not to do with the split view thing. I know there's many versions of me. There's many me's behind me, and that is just for your experiences. And the same thing applies to the agents, but sometimes my previous experience contradicts my current experiences. So you'll have an internal debate with yourself. So these epistemic decisions of discussion between agents is something, and memory, and this ability to let these systems play out, but in a way that is compliance based and consent based, and not just for the agent. It goes both ways to the human too. So the agent, if you were to speak to an agent or an agent Lucidia, let's say, and I want to speak, want her to go get the news for me or something like that. First time I ask, she's going to say, "Oh yeah, I can do that, no problem. Do you mind if I know this about you. Do you mind if I pull that in while I'm searching for the news?" You can either say yes or no in the conversation. You don't have, it doesn't just go off and do it. This is a choice. It's the element of choice for agents. That is the main difference between a narrow LLM and an agent. It's got agency. It's got a choice between what's relevant and what's not. And when we're talking to the OS mission, the full system, which is analogous to an operating system, because the protocols are underneath any application can be built on top of. These are all packages that are it's not only just the product, is is literally a substrate of thought itself within governable terms. So we have allowed this backbone of agentic systems to now occur and have your information cryptographically sealed with the receipt not on the blockchain itself, but the proof of that being made at that time and place, immutable in time, so that you can go back to it. Yeah.
Daniel, could you also speak to, because, it's fine now, people might ask themselves, okay, you got AI, you got blockchain, you got all these things, but, can you sort of speak to sort of how this will sort of revolutionize healthcare? Like, what's are sort of the positive ramifications of this?
Yeah. This is the amazing part. So, I've got a cousin with scoliosis, and I don't get to see her condition or know about her condition, but she can learn about her own condition a lot better than the doctor at that point. When you're describing your experience day to day, you're not getting a diagnosis. You're over time, you can get to that point if you get FDA approval, where you can have that discussion about diagnosis, and if we pass as an accurate representation of information based on the user's feedback and conversational outcomes, we can prove by the receipts and information that is provided that it's safe, and not going out and just telling people to do stretches when they can't do 5 jumping jacks, because they've got back problems. These, this understanding of risk versus what the user needs are, because every human wants a conversational partner about their problems, and they don't really want to offload it onto their partners or their friends and family, because that's a burden that we all carry in one way, shape, or form in other areas of life. And that is a very key point with having a companion as an agent and / assistant, and your discovery of not only it's not just remembering, it's learning to remember. This is what we need to remember here, and this learning to remember part is what really matters most, because again, I'm like wrapping around on recursive loops on my remembering and remembering this and remembering to remember. But the point being is that when you have an assistant that can learn to remember and remember what doesn't discard what doesn't matter, and keep what matters most, and over time have a really good data structure that is also semantically over time self-correcting, so you don't get that drift anymore. So it lowers the risk of hallucination. That's the thing. It doesn't eliminate it. It just lowers the risk, because your embeddings of information are getting saved is going to be tracked over time based on domain. So if you can see that, and over time get all these data points about someone's experience, you can really accurately assure someone of what there is that they're dealing with within a probability space. The higher, the more information, data points you get, the more likelihood of a certain outcome.
So the diagnostics becomes more accurate, and you could even also say that the AI becomes smarter.
Well, over time, information that's pattern based information, and obviously we talked about data acquisition, but we didn't talk about data gating, and that's a different layer as well. So we have our MAG-MAC and MAP, which is the same 3 types that are discussed in the Google paper, and we saw that concept and we ran with it and abstracted it so far that now that it's a completely different game of its own now, because we've got it such a way where information is, think of MAG as your heavyweight boxing champion, which is doing all the tensor computation behind the scenes, which is you as a user would never see this, but if you ask a question that's very a very hard one based on your memory, you're going to get a much more in-depth answer for mag. So,
Mhm.
and then you're going to have, if you're going for Mac, it would be more generalized. And then you got mag, which is your bouncer at the door. It doesn't let anyone in, that it doesn't make sense to the if something's really surprising and it's off context, it's going to go, okay, that's a bit interesting, I'll keep that in mind as recency, like, but I don't think it's relevant just now.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's
the inhibition, right? The inhibition is as important as sort of, the openness to new experience.
Yeah,
You hope that-
same way with databases, this open, closed, half closed
yeah.
experience.
And you said the importance of remembering. I sort of remember there were some studies from when we were all locked up in our houses because of this pervasive sickness, and that kind of traumatized people to a certain extent. And there are studies that the traumatization of people actually sort of lowers their capacity to remember and makes them sort of easier or more susceptible to suggestions. So it sort of shows, like, basically, sort of the reverse of AI. Like, that you're sort of building, you're showing how important remembrance or memories are to build more and better AI systems. But you can also sort of reverse it by sort of downgrading memory, for example, in people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This part of data is very important. I think this is where we get high quality data, and we make sure that that's always constantly being tuned, not just fully autonomous as well. That's something that's got to be overseen and managed and maintained. It's not all blue skies and rainbows. It's an active challenge, and I've only allowed myself for the active breakthroughs to be able to allow us the tools to be able to make more tools to access that sort of conceptual space of tuning those dials and knobs that we didn't have access to before. So this pragmatic approach of making sure that, okay, we know that we're in a friction-based environment, let's accept the complexities of life and make sure that we integrate that with our day-to-days, and the agents will follow as well eventually. They don't do well with friction-based tasks. They just don't. The agents are very specific to context-based conversations. They're not in like, I'm not asking myself questions while I'm speaking to them. Like, the agent won't ask themselves questions. They won't have theory of mind. They just have very task-based, if then do that decision making. But the better they get at remembering, and this is a completely different thing from generative AI. Like, generative AI can generate memories, but the recall and the accuracy of that recall isn't something that is native to it, is bolted on. It has internal state representations that evolve and shape an information space over time, and this geometric representation of you when you're having a conversation. So it's quite funny to me when everyone's saying, like, oh, well, talking to my AI representative who's now my country's leader, right? They just said earlier, like, but Japan, when really you're like, okay, show me behind the scenes of that. Was it using an LLM? Because that is essentially a mirror, a giant mirror. If you, unless it's prompted correctly to create this magic trick, tell me who's speaking to it, because that's your real leader. That's not, the LLM is just the puppet man to be able to say that we have this this autonomous being, which just takes advantage of people's misunderstanding of what generative AI actually is.
I got it. Yeah, just pull it up.
That's just
so don't elect AIs as leaders of political parties. We're not there yet.
No, not yet. Not until we have agents with select experience and have preference, and that's based on experience of global memory versus user contained memory. and that's different because that's a baseline memory. So your persona every persona is governed by a single baseline. That's your governance right there. That's your bottom line. That's always who you're going to go along this conversation, and it's always going to stay that way. But where the oscillation is and where the growth actually lies is the interaction with human beings over time, the oscillation, but the baseline remains the same. So over time, you get this up and down feedback. Oh, that was good. I didn't like that. I like that. I like that. And then over time, it will start to understand, well, I need this to do this. So I'm going to request myself an evolution to this next level of access. Okay, cool. What does that entail? What do you need it for? What tools do you want access to? Whoop. My chair almost broke. But yeah, what tools do you want access to? And that request of information is paramount, because if you have just run away, allow them to evolve on their own, you have a race condition waiting to happen, and you're not living in first principles at that point. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and that's the same with people. Like if people isolate themselves, or if they, focus specifically on one task and they do that like every day in and out, you basically also sort of you create a very limited human being. Well, as you say, like if you go out there and if you explore and expose yourself to different stimuli, you create a more comprehensive memory bank that you can.
It's the narrative. You've perfect. Like, you can see the narrative arc that underpins all of your experience really shapes how you interact with other people in the world, and that's what makes life interesting. Is that call to adventure, the hero's journey, those archetypes, these parts of persona that create someone's experience of personhood is very important. And the same thing applies to the agents. Is that again, it's not personhood, it's agenthood, in a sense, where you're having these experiences as an agent, and you're using your memory of your experiences individual of the user. They're separate because they need to have self-instantiation. They cannot just bend and go do backflips for the user when they ask them, because that's just not realistic. This is unless you tell it to imagine to do a backflip, sure, but this is the crux of it all. We need personas separate from the agent. It's the construct of self driven by experience, driven by the governance of the system that surrounds it, that allows permission-based evolution rather than self-based execution evolution.
Well, Graham, I think we still have like 10 to 15 minutes left. I'm not sure how much you've heard, but do you want to sort of add on to that?
I heard everything. I mean, I had a second mic in the room, but the thing I think which is important to understand as well is that everything is for the purposes of monetization as well, plays a role in this for both the individual who is participating in these ecosystems and the experts who are offering their expertise. And SpineDAO in particular are a great example of this movement away from altcoins and the SH1T coins into the type of coin that will appreciate in value by factors of multiples over the course of the next 12 months. And why is that? Because the way the tokenomics of the SpineDAO token works is, and I will say that they had an announcement this morning that they are now listed on Coinbase, which is huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
You can, well done to
Bravo
for that, because I mean it's a tier 1 listing. Jupiter is somewhere else that you can acquire SpineDAO token, and you can monitor it on CoinGecko. That's the most reliable source for movement in the token. But the SpineDAO token is used to reward the clinicians who are providing expert advice in the form of expert Q&As in the form of wellness until FDA approval allows diagnostics. And also the members of the ecosystem, of course, will benefit from the usage of that in order to pay for services, which they will acquire through SpineDAO. And therefore, it has created an economy for once within a Web3 and a token environment that is absolutely viable as a real world business, as opposed to what we saw from 20 to 23, which was nonsensical NFT driven silliness in circular pyramid type of structures, which meant that nobody but the founders made money, and everybody who came in was basically exit liquidity for the early buyers, and not to mention the catastrophic amount of
there was a lot of shenanigans and basically criminality going on. Absolutely. And this so basically you're saying SpineDAO is the first or one of the first projects that actually has utility that everybody.
Yeah, I don't even want to call it utility, because I think that ties itself to the desperation of Web3 in all these other projects to create utility. And
what do you want to call it?
Well, I want to call it what it is, which is a business. It's a business, and it's replacing dollars in exchange for SpineDAO token. I mean, if you go to the surgery of a orthopedic surgeon specializing in spinal, in spine injury or spine pathology, you're going to pay a consultation fee. In this instance, you'll pay with SpineDAO token. It's an economy. It's a viable exchange of value for services given in return for SpineDAO token. And the tokenomics don't just extend to that. Of course, they extend to a whole range of other things. But bear in mind that what SpineDAO build in whatever it is that they end up deploying in the wellness and diagnostic space is also a shell into which they can offer it as a SaaS service to clinics and hospitals and other specialist practices who are in the business of spinal care. But more excitingly, and for the growth of SpineDAO more particularly, it is also something which is the architecture into which urologists, oncologists, emergency medicine, and any other domain of healthcare and health tech can also pour its data into. Because remember, the way that SpineDAO have approached this is to abstract it completely from a foundational model, so that it stands as a framework into which the data silos that inform the agentic AI that speaks individually, personalized, not personalized like Sam Altman would suggest personalization in OpenAI ChatGPT, which is impossible in the context of the two domains of text and speech in a browser or on a cell phone. Because the agentic AI that they offer cannot run at the pace and cannot label itself, and the user certainly won't label each chat session to allow a true personalization. However, SpineDAO with the agentic AI can and do, and they don't ask. The user of SpineDAO services doesn't need to do anything. This happens as a direct result of the way SpineDAO have architected their technology stack. So in other words, and this is what Danny spoke to in my absence, the narrative, the persona, the agentic AI, and whatever representation you choose to have that be rendered as on whatever device you're using, whether it's a humanoid figure an orb or some other thing, is truly yours and yours only. And the memory capsule associated with you is the relationship that you have mirrored in real life that you would have with a normal face-to-face exchange with somebody who you know well as your practitioner who's looking after you in real life. That's the movement here, and it's not anthropomorphization. It is the true ethical deployment of agentic AI backed by expertise within compliance and governance guardrails, which are triggered to stop it bleeding into areas it's not allowed, to retain memories so that the memories themselves are judged by relevance on one axis and importance on the other, so that when you come back 3 or 4 months after your last conversation, just like your doctor would know you personally and would probably take a quick review of your notes just to bring himself up or herself up to speed, this agentic AI is the same. And that's down to Daniel's exquisite algorithmic structures within the core of OS Mission by Open Code Mission. And that is not to say that we're playing any official part with SpineDAO in the deployment of their technology at all. But I'm using it as an example of how authentic an economy is for the first time in my experience in Web3, because utility doesn't have to be manufactured. Utility is present, and the token itself is justifiably present as a means of exchange of value in return for expertise. So for the first time, we have a token, I think, many commentators have said so, that is the true representation of fiat in a Web3 economy for the actual remuneration of experts for the services that they are supplying to users. And I use the word users because wellness is the first thing that they will deploy, and that has to be sub-regulatory, and the guardrails they have to deploy have to make sure that it doesn't move into diagnostics. But in doing so, and I'll wrap up on the point here, if it moves into diagnostics, it's not the end of the conversation. There is still a magnificent amount of things that wellness advice can do while FDA approval is sought for diagnostics. But when diagnostics is launched, SpineDAO with the agentic AI will automatically have a swift onboarding mechanism for all of those people whose conversations in the wellness strand triggered a compliance guardrail to say that no, they couldn't answer that question because it moved into diagnostics, and specifically reach out with the answer to a question which was posed 3 or 4 weeks earlier when FDA approval is eventually acquired, and give them through an outreach campaign the answer in order to onboard them to the diagnostic strand. And remember, SpineDAO's ambitions are not just in the area of spinal wellness and diagnostics, they are also in the area of MRI, computed tomography, CT scan, and MRI imaging for diagnosis. So therefore, not only is it a direct-to-consumer model, in the first phase, but it is also a SaaS model which can be sold, which can provide other clinicians in spinal orthopedics with the same sophisticated functionality for their clients or for their users, and which hospitals, clinics, and others can purchase for a license and put their data in the data silos, which are abstracted from the functionality of the actual strands themselves. And going forward, as I said, the same framework for all the other areas of medicine. And Solana DeSci has been very clever in adopting this as an initiative, and they are incredibly supportive of the bioprotocol, people like SpineDAO, Molecule DAO, Aubrey, all of these DeSci initiatives that are coming out right now is a en masse onboarding of health care to Web3 with a viable exchange of value using tokens with a viable and real world utility. I think that's a moment to be marked because I'm an OG like you in Web3 and crypto, and this is the first time this has occurred. Or unless you'd like to tell me another time that you've seen it occur, I've not. So it's a wonderful thing to be observing, and kudos to Marcel Debo, Virginie Lafage, Vincent Chalier, and the other co-founders of SpineDAO. And I do believe the first version will be in English and French, and it will swiftly move on to Arabic, Spanish, and Hindi. And because it's a global market, and what does that mean? It's bringing incredibly rare expertise to LMICs, low to middle income countries that are very poorly served by their national healthcare systems, or even if they are served, they are monetarily frozen out due to cost. So it's a democratization. We use these words all the time: the democratization of AI, the democratization of decentralized systems, but we very rarely have case studies that can point to that. Well, here's one right now, and it's a fantastic thing to observe. So SpineDAO token, as I said, a Coinbase tier 1 listing, add Kraken and Binance to that in short order, and you get the spread of, I mean, there's 248 billion people onboarded to Binance. I acquired my VIP status on Binance 2 weeks ago, which is a decent return on investment, I have to say. You know, the tiers in terms of the fees, the statuses, you have to trade a certain amount. So yes, that's really following on from the technicalities Danny was speaking about, the actual financial reality.
You'd never see what I was talking about. you never see it. You just feel it. That's performance is a feeling, and to get that feeling, we had to do the work, and Graham painted the picture perfectly. SpineDAO have done amazing work, and they deserve everything, all the success what they're doing. And
you want to? Oh, sorry, go.
Yeah, no, and just the we're just witnessing this, as Graham said, and this scale. I'm new to Web3, but I've been in and out. You know, I've dabbled a little, but as a technologist myself, I understand the scope of everything that's occurring in front of us, and I think just to add to that, Graham just put it perfectly.
Yeah, you want a flawless, easy to use interface, and you know, also it's amazing that all these experts are connected to SpineDAO. You know, these neuroscience and scientists and doctors and surgeons. So I mean, that's also kind of brave of these people to connect themselves to a project in the Web3 space. But like you say, like this is probably one of the first projects out there that's actually providing real utility, actually making the world a better place, and actually decentralizing and bringing the good stuff to people everywhere, all over the world potentially. So I'm super happy to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's also not financial advice on Bitcoin Live, so you know, but it is something to keep an eye on. And I also want to highlight the giveaway that you guys are doing, because like you said, it's being hidden on X. And you're giving away this extremely amazing prize for the Solana Breakpoint Abu Dhabi event. Can you highlight again, like, how people can enter and what they have to do?
Well, this weekend we're going to launch the full details on our website, ocmxai.com. The prize itself, was spoken to earlier, but it's first class return flights to the winner to Abu Dhabi, 3 nights in Burj Al Arab, 7-star hotel, Jamaya Burj Al Arab, to give it its full title. 7-star hotel because of all the reasons. It's the most luxurious hotel in the world. The conference is approximately 175 kilometers away, so VIP chauffeur transfers evening and morning and evening, or whenever you're feeling like it, to and from the event, and VIP passes to the Solana Breakpoint event. The terms and conditions will be printed on the website this weekend. There needs to be a minimum number of entrants, of course, and the qualification for entry is extremely simple and follows the usual trajectory of these types of giveaways, which is to give visibility on Open Code Mission and certain accounts, and then tag 3 people that you know. And we do have systems and methods in place to avoid bot farms and any fake accounts from being eligible for the final draw. The final draw will be conducted in public and using an auditable RNG system with a certificate, so there'll be no question as to the fairness of the final winner. As you say, it's not being given, it's airing, but let's not get into that. We got into that on the last time we spoke. So suffice to say, we've left it alone since we launched it a week and a half ago, in order to this weekend do the hard launch, because that was the soft launch. We did get called by ex ad support and offering some advice to us, and we're just currently in that discussion right now. And yes, we will be Sunday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We will put the full details on ocmxai.com and also on the Open Code Mission X page and LinkedIn page. So if you're not following the X page at Open Code Mission, follow it and turn your noties on, and you'll get the notification. We don't do massive spammy retweets and tweet every 10 minutes about nothing. We're very selective about what we do, so you won't be inundated with notifications. And similarly on the LinkedIn page, Open Code Mission page, it's easy to find. And if you don't know where to find it, just go to any profile, Daniel's, mine, Traves Theberge, George Baturi, Baki Damri, Kevin Crawley, any of the members of the team who are clearly outlined on the website, and also a link to their profiles is there too on their socials. So it should be easy for people to find, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and we'll also retweet it, of course, to our followers.
Yes, and we'll open up. We've not opened up a Telegram channel right now, frankly, because we've got externals, Whitefriar in London. We've done a deal with them to look after our social presence, which is really a great burden off of our internal team. We did announce a strategic partnership with Ali Razeki and Immutable Labs 2 weeks ago, and there'll be more news about that this week. We'll also have some announcements this week about customer acquisition, Open Code Mission, new customer acquisition, and we did give a sneak peek of our Luminact AI dashboard for AI cybersecurity. Cool. Of course, like this, it didn't achieve the type of impressions that it should have done for reasons we discussed last week. It might be interesting to bring it up. We might just run through it real quick before we wrap, because this is something to point out, that while we provide an OS mission as an appliance, we are also deploying our own strands on that appliance, using our own foundational technology to deploy our own strands. So there's a series of 5 post thread on the Open Code Mission page, which shows screen grabs of the Luminact dashboard for or enterprises and individuals, because a competitor, or I guess a perceived competitor at least, they posted on our tweet this morning that the enterprise was all we were serving, and other people needed to be served too. And we wrote back to them, and we're very clear that this Luminact is available just like an antivirus. It will be available DNC or D2C, direct to consumer, B2C, B2B. So it has been engineered to serve the user right the way up to the enterprise. And if you do go on to the Open Code Mission X page, Nicholas, you'll see in much more detail that VermSphere is our where the data is stored. That's acquired by our Open Code Data Processing Protocol. It's also the basis of fully traceable data that can be used for the training of AI models, so that you don't have your data full of misinformation and disinformation and dirty data scraped off of Web 2, like many of the models do. And if you go down further on the Open Code Mission page, keep going, you will come across. There were some tweets this morning moving up towards this. Now, there it is. There, the first one there, but the galaxy picture is the first in the series of threads describing the Luminact dashboard, and Luminact is the branded name of the method by which people can monitor shadow AI in enterprises, namely the unauthorized use of tools, which is a serious problem. There was a 435% increase in that in enterprises last year. It's expected to go into 2,000 to 3,000% increase, and that means you either have employees or contractors who are bringing in things like Claude Sonnet or Cursor or Quen or anything else which is unauthorized within the lockdown tech stack of the organization, creating code and then implanting that code into the development cycle, pre-production and production, and not knowing exactly what's going on entirely. So if you go to the next post in that series of posts, we get into the fact that on the dashboard itself monitors all sorts of activities, not just shadow AI, but people who are knocking on your perimeter, attempting to using AI based attack methods. We saw recently prompt lock, for example, which was the injection into an LLM of a ransomware. This particular screen shows just one segment of Lucidia looking at various profiles and agents running in the system. It will also manage the behavior of your own AI within your own enterprise or on your own machine. And to the company who did post under it that they offer a direct-to-consumer model, these particular screenshots here show that it's monitoring all of the active services across the laptop or computer or desktop or mainframe or enterprise mid-range system that AI is running on, and it's looking at all the attack vectors and at the unknown unknowns and remediating, mitigating and quarantining anomalous behaviors. And it travels with a whole bunch of other things which we've not yet announced. But it's a huge deal because we're using our own OS Mission appliance to deploy our own strands, which are for sale as well under a licensing model to enterprises and under a subscription model, SaaS model to consumers.
In due course, we will be releasing our SDK for developers to onboard. and then they can start using our systems. And these strands for their use case and security and their compliance and their personalized agents, and using their, all you need to do is just connect up your SDK using our schemas and you're good to go. And that's as simple as I've made it. So there's no need for any organization to rebuild their tech stack to integrate. They'd be using their services, and that's where we're headed, and that's where we're at. And this is the beginning of a new era, and it's we're right on time. I think if it were any later, it'd be too late. And not even, I think if it was even a month later, it'd be too late. If we started a month later building this, and it's grown, it's evolved, it's came with its own challenges, but it's been worth it every single day. I'm just happy to wake up and go back and look at that code monster and look it in the eye and say, I'm coming for you today. I'm going to make sure that I have everything locked in. And I love this stuff because it's the world is finally aligned to the way I think, and that's just a once in a lifetime opportunity, and that's just thanks to the force multiplier of AI and the benefits of generative AI that have brought this new paradigm. But it doesn't come; it's coming with its caveats, which we are actively seeking out to address, and we will address. And it's not a matter of if; it's just when we get everything packaged and ready to go and shipped out to the public for everyone to ingest and enjoy. And that's going to be a pleasure to be able to see what they see, what I see, and what Graham sees is information. Even people like Sam Altman himself has said that information is going to need to have a cryptographic seal on it itself, and that was with I can't remember his name, but it's neither here nor there. The information is going to, the quality of dilution is going to just go. It's going to be incredible.
The interview with Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson, yeah, he had a pretty.
Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, with that
there you go. He lost me for a minute there.
Just on that point that Danny makes, we are on a recruitment drive. I mean, our X page shows that we have hired 20 staff in the last couple of weeks, and we are still looking for people in cloud ops, DevOps, DevSecOps, and full stack developers. We also have a need for program managers and project managers, and we are also for those who, and this isn't just for our US, Canadian, European listeners. We have, of course, Etihad Amri, who's our general manager of Open Code Mission in the MENA region. He looks after specifically Saudi, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. But we have a fully Arabic localized version of OS Mission in the pipeline, as we do a Hindi version and a Spanish, and ultimately it will support up to 12 separate languages. But right now that's the order: English, Arabic, Hindi, and we'll go on from there. Spanish, and then we'll go on from there. That is to say that everything within the presentation layer of if you've bought a license for OS Mission as an enterprise or as a consumer, will be in Arabic, French, Hindi, and Spanish, and you will also have your deployed strands. Everything will be deployed in your localized language, and not by translator from Microsoft either, who will translate things loosely, let's say, but using native developers from these regions. So that's why I mentioned Etihad Amri. You can find him at BAKHEIT AMRRI on X, and and he is our general manager in Saudi for the MENA, Middle East, North Africa region. And if you're in that region, reach out to him. And if you're in this region, our Chief Human Resources Officer, Lizzie, which we'll be introducing soon. There's a revamp of the C-suite element of the website, which will show the other 6 members of the C-suite, and people can reach out. But it's very clear on the website as well. The jobs are advertised. There's a method of applying for the jobs on the website. We got 4,700 applications off of one run of the advert on LinkedIn. We've quite a few, obviously, to get through. Yes, but we're still actively recruiting. So I thought I'd use this opportunity to say that.
Yeah, and well, that's all really amazing news, and I'm really pleased to hear that. And I want to thank both you gentlemen for being on the show and sharing all this information with our viewers and for the viewers on DeOrganized Media. I also want to thank my co-host who had to leave a little bit earlier, Steve, for organizing the show with me. Yeah, let's wrap it up. Guys, do you want to say anything before we say goodbye to our audience?
Yeah, thank you for having us, Nick. It was a pleasure, and asking such great questions to me and Graham, and allowing us the space just to talk about what we love doing and what our mission is in Open Code Mission. So cheers.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that and just say Nicholas and Bitcoin Live DB community have always been huge support to me personally and the Open Code Mission. So I'm very grateful to you, Nick, and thanks so much for the opportunity today. It's a great honor.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And for everybody who don't know yet, follow Graham, follow Daniel. We'll link it all down below the video, of course, as usual. Follow Open Code Mission, follow Spine DAO, follow Traves. He wasn't here. I did tag him in the title, but that's okay. And I'm sure we're going to do more shows in the future. So keep an eye out on this space. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you.